The Australian military is under fire following the release of a damning report this week that has found credible evidence of war crimes in Afghanistan. The long-awaited report, based on a 4-year inquiry, has found evidence that Australian special forces killed dozens of Afghan prisoners, farmers, or other civilians. The findings of the inquiry, carried out by the Australian Defence Force, reveal a twisted and extreme warrior culture among the elite of the Australian armed forces who were deployed to Afghanistan. The commandos were supposed to fight militants thousands of kilometers away from Australia, but many of them now stand accused of engaging in a methodical campaign to kill unarmed Afghans and conceal it. In one instance, the inquiry has found evidence that platoon commanders told junior soldiers to get their first kill by shooting prisoners. An academic who carried out the initial research into the atrocities believes that they were, quote, deliberate, repeated, and targeted war crimes.
It's really shocking to hear that the Australian forces were asked to execute prisoners and leave weapons next to them to justify the killing. This is far from being the objective of the NATO and multinational forces in Afghanistan that initially said it is fighting Al-Qaeda. What these forces are doing is they are really enjoying the killing of the Afghani people and also their prisoners.
The inquiry findings show that some of the soldiers who are accused of committing these war crimes are still serving in the Australian military. The report has been highly redacted, and many details of the atrocities remain unknown. But its authors have admitted that they probably failed to uncover all crimes committed during the period of time under investigation. They have recommended a mechanism to collect and assess further allegations of atrocities in Afghanistan. The findings are deeply embarrassing for the Australian government, which is a vociferous critic of rights abuses around the world. The government initially tried to suppress whistleblowers and local media that had tried to bring the alleged war crimes to public attention.
The internal military report has found evidence showing Australian elite forces killing 39 Afghan civilians and prisoners between 2009 and 2013. The Australian military has admitted that none of the killings were committed during the heat of battle. Now, the few details of the alleged war crimes which have been published are shocking. Many believe that a damning document is a rare admission of war crimes during a U.S.-led war. Australia deployed forces to Afghanistan in 2002 as part of the U.S.-led campaign and still has over 1,500 troops stationed there. The U.S. military itself is also being investigated by the International Criminal Court for possible war crimes in the country as well.
Australian authorities tried hard to keep a lid on this story when it first emerged in 2017. That year, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation published shocking allegations of unlawful killings of unarmed Afghans, including children, based on leaked military documents. The Australian Federal Police raided the office of the national broadcaster and tried in vain to prosecute the journalist who blew the whistle on the killings. The story now seems to have turned into a major scandal. The latest findings are a painful legacy of America's longest war. The U.S.-led invasion of Afghanistan in October 2001 has resulted in nearly 2 decades of war. A very large number of Afghan civilians, including children, have lost their lives in American and U.S.-led airstrikes and operations. The U.S.-led military campaign has failed to wipe out militancy. It instead devastated Afghanistan and has left the country grappling with an endless list of problems. The United States itself is being investigated for possible war crimes in Afghanistan. The ICC probe began earlier this year after a preliminary report found reasons to believe war crimes had been committed during the war. U.S. President Donald Trump, who was infuriated by the investigation, imposed sanctions on the court. His decision drew worldwide condemnation. Observers believe that the U.S. must have a lot to worry about as the International Criminal Court investigates its actions during the war in Afghanistan.